Well, welcome everyone to today's Developer Roundtable. We are joined by some very special guests. We have Tim from MonkeyZoo and Brandt and Grig from SumsetTech. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hello, hello.
So I have a few questions. Did you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what MonkeyZoo is doing? Tim?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. My name's Tim, and I'm the brains behind the MonkeyZoo project. A little bit about myself. I was, um, a long time ago, I was part of the armed forces, and always had a background in sort of technology. I was in the Royal Signals, and so technology and signals was always something that I'd been interested in, and um, I sort of left the armed forces and joined a communications company and became a project manager for them delivering sort of network installations across buildings. And during that time, this was sort of 2008 sort of time. I first came up with the idea of MonkeyZoo, and part of that was generally more of a social media platform. So that's a little bit about my background, but I still do a little bit here and now. Obviously, some sort of technical side of things, but I often work still with the MOD, doing bits and pieces as well. So but yeah, I'll pass it across to the other guys to introduce themselves, and then we can talk a bit more about where MonkeyZoo was born.
Yeah, no, it's been a wonderful ride. I've been involved in Chia for a few years now, and Tim and I had the opportunity to meet on a couple of the Twitter spaces and really discuss some interesting ideas throughout the last couple of years. Grig and I were able to form SumsetTech a little over a year, about a year and a half ago now, actually a year and a half to the day. And the really interesting thing about all of this is that Greg and I were really aligned as to how we wanted to enter the ecosystem, bring more decentralization to all of these different utility, and also build additional utility on the blockchain. So partnering with Tim on this fusion puzzle was really a great step in that direction, and essentially establishes composable media on the blockchain with on-chain based provenance. But yeah, very excited to be here. And one disclaimer I got to make is that I do also work for Chia Network. So I'm taking off my Chia hat today and I'm putting on my SumsetTech hat. And everything that I'll be discussing will be me as a representative of SumsetTech. But yeah, it's been great working with Grig, and I'll turn it on over to him.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. So yeah, I've been developing for in different platforms and for different audiences for about 30 years now. So most of my life. And this is the latest iteration of me trying to help the creator community really take back their control over their own economy and their own assets, and to really own the entire process from creation to the rewards that they can actually get from their efforts. I think, this has been a big journey of watching the large corporations sort of take over and create walled gardens of opportunities. And it's always been a dream of mine to make things more decentralized. And I think Chia is an amazing platform for that. The network, it has just so many benefits that I'm sure most of the people on this call have heard many times before, but they really do come down to some incredibly important principles. And at the core of what we've been developing is what I think is the birth of something new, which is we're really working for the first time with on-chain composable media and other assets. So for the first time, we can publish stuff and then mix the content together to create new content. And all of that is tracked online, and it's all or on chain. And I'm really excited to show this version, which I think I have to take my hat off to Tim at MonkeyZoo for supporting us through this and giving us the opportunity to prove the technology. I think what you'll see today is that There's some really good examples of that in the visual domain, where you have layers of art and you want to mix and match them. And so it's a very clear visual example of the sort of things that will be possible in the future. And MonkeyZoo is the first one to do it. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks, Grig and Brandt. You may have answered this in your introductions, but just to maybe dive a little bit deeper on how did you guys get started with Chia specifically and NFTs more generally?
Yeah, so you know, I stumbled across Chia really. I like probably a few people did. You know, I was always involved with some form of crypto mining, whether it was Ethereum or Helium or just about anything to do with hardware mining. I was looking at, and I sort of stumbled across Chia at the time where Ethereum mining was sort of coming to an end, and made the decision fairly early that it looked like a way to sort of maybe offload the GPUs and move on to hard drive mining, which I'd never really tried before. So you know, that's one of the reasons why I stumbled into Chia. And then the more I learned about it, rather than just looking at it a way of mining a new cryptocurrency, the more I learned, the more I understood, and realized quite what it was and what it was capable of. And I think you know, when you start looking at the things that the NFT specs can do on Chia as well, where it solves many of the problems that I'd looked at in the past when sort of thinking about how the MonkeyZoo project could come about. Things as, you know, what seems simple now on Chia, like provenance and permanence and royalties, you know, licensing and things like this that hadn't really been thought about before, you know, on sort of these account model blockchains. So yeah, it was a stumbled in moment, and I think listening to early spaces on Twitter, you know, with the likes of Brandt and people, sort of the education side of it drew me in even further. And you know, that's really why the MonkeyZoo project came back to life. Like I said earlier on, originally this was thought about, and I created these characters back in 2008, so a long time ago, and they've sort of been sat on hold since. They were created for a social media platform, and you know, this was the days before sort of mobile data. You know, this was the really original idea, was something called Text My T-shirt, where we would use SMS texting, you know, as a service to interact with other people sort of anonymously. So that's how far back it goes. And yeah, we sort of it coincided with the time of Twitter being born. You know, this is still the days of MySpace and things like that. So yeah, I sort of put this on the back burner. Obviously, I couldn't compete with the likes of Twitter, so you know, we put this on the back burner. And part of my thinking behind the MonkeyZoo project has always been along the lines of gaming assets. Essentially, it's this world of gaming assets. And you know, I've played games for the last 20 years, and I can still remember some of those games where you spent hours collecting these items, and I still can remember these items today. So there's always been a part of me that thinks that we should be able to, you know, take these assets, control these assets ourselves, and carry them with us. And that's never been possible before. And even looking into to doing this in the past on Ethereum or Polygon, the account model just doesn't sit very well with how ownership works when it comes to digital assets. And I think that's always been an issue. And then just listening to the guys, like I say, in some of these spaces talking about Chia and learning about how this coinset model works and how smart contracting individual coins, I could really see a pathway opening up. Yeah, and it was sort of a light bulb moment that this could possibly happen. And I think actually listening to to Richard Efficient. He done I think he did an interview with somebody on a YouTube video. And I remember listening to it and sort of almost fell off my chair thinking, wow, that's pretty much the white paper I've just written up. So yeah, it was a good time. And so I thought, let's do it, let's make it happen. So yeah.
Great. How about you, Grig and Brandt? How'd you guys get into involved with Chia and NFTs in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually first found out about Chia because of a FUD article. The old article right around mainnet launch that was saying Chia was burning out hard drives, and I've been certified by CompTIA's Networking Plus, and I really wanted to learn more about how that could be possible. I knew a bit about hard drives, I knew a bit about I/O and what happens to a hard drive, so I was really curious as to what in the world is this thing doing to actually break hard drives. So that was one side of it. The other side of it is that I've had a vision for a project that I want to build, and it's still underway. It's still a few years out now, but the project that I want to build has to do with a decentralized form of education, and I realized it will require a blockchain. It requires large amounts of storage, and really requires that ability to have a uniquely verifiable pseudonymous identity on that blockchain. And when I learned about Chia, because of hard drives burning out, I really started digging into the architecture and learning about, okay, what's going on? Of course, that was a FUD article. I actually reached out to Hema from Hema DAO and had him translate the original article, which was in Chinese, so I could better understand what the actual content was. And it turned out that what they had really done was go through and speculate if you had continually plotted on hard drives for their entire life. And of course, that's not what you do on Chia. You plot once and then you go ahead and farm them from thereafter. So the article was entirely based on speculation as if you were to be continuously plotting. So that was debunked. And then I was even more intrigued about the actual technology for, well, what are they doing with these X value tables? Why are we writing them to a hard drive? What does it do for the consensus mechanism? So I really did a deep dive into Chia, loved the technology, loved the security behind it, and really felt at home when I started watching some of the videos of the team explaining this is Chia Lisp and this is the Chia blockchain. That really sunk me into Chia. I was a participant in the hackathon that had occurred where there was some hoopla going on about payouts to winners, and of course CNI stepped up to fill that void. But during that time I had submitted a very basic IDE. I can't even really call it an IDE. It was essentially a wrapper around the Chia Lisp so that I wouldn't have to continually run the same CDV commands in order to produce the hashes and test different things out for puzzles. And at that time, Andreas, who started Mint Garden, was also building something similar, and his was built in the web. So he and I both had very similar concepts. We started communicating at that time, and I began helping Andreas to build out Mint Garden. And at that time, it was XDH Gallery, of course. And we went through, and Aceveld had created a really cool option for NFTs on Chia, where he built out his own puzzle and generated it that way. So I learned even more about the technology and what it could become. And then, of course, Chia released their NFT standard. And around that time, Andreas and I separated ways. So I was no longer with Mint Garden. And I went ahead and started talking with Grig, who he and I had very similar passions and interests as to why we got into the blockchain and what we want to do with blockchain technology in the future. So it was a great coupling between he and I. And then, of course, throughout this process, while I was helping to build out the community for XH Gallery and Mint Garden, Aceveld and I were hosting weekly Twitter spaces. So every single weekend we would be on there talking to the community, engaging with everybody about, as Tim had said, learning what Chia is to the nth degree of, okay, this is how you could potentially implement these extremely complex concepts utilizing Chia Lisp. throughout those conversations, Tim and I really kind of hit it off, and again had similar interests as to what we can do with puzzles and what we could build with them in the future. So there was a great coupling there as well. And I hate to say it, but the rest was kind of history. And here we are a year and a half after that point, where when Tim and I were first discussing the base concept behind the fusion puzzle, which we'll show a demo of here later, we really didn't know whether it was going to work. We knew it would be possible, but we didn't know how. We didn't know the steps involved. So we took about a year-long process, just really diving into it, learning what the puzzles can do, how to manipulate things, how to make it more user-friendly as well, and brought on a number of other community members, such as Lucky8, who helped to design who I can't say helped, he designed the Chia list puzzle. And of course, we had some guidance as to this is kind of how we want the user experience to go, and really gave him a big wish list. And he came back with a beautiful solution for the fusion puzzle. It's gone through multiple iterations, where at first it was going to be a direct sign option, where users would essentially have a random blob that they would need to sign on their own. So it would be very, very difficult for a user to understand what they were getting involved with. And that concept has since evolved to the utilization of offer files. So the user's interaction with these on-chain puzzles are strictly through offer files now, making it very user-friendly. It's very familiar to what they experience elsewhere. And the only difference is, instead of interacting with another user, they're interacting with an on-chain smart puzzle. So really an exciting process, and I'm very excited to see how far we've gotten, and also that this is just the premise. There's so much more we can be doing. And I know Tim has some wonderful ideas. Grig has some wonderful ideas. I have some great ideas too, as to where we can go with this in the future. So I'm really glad to be here, and glad that we've been able to work together over the last year and a half here, Tim. And, Grig, it's been very exciting over the last year and a half. And I know we have some really interesting other projects that we'll announce at some point in the future as well. But I'll turn it on over to you. I'll stop going down the rabbit hole here.
Sounds good. So I guess that kind of brings up our main topic, is this project that you have been working on, MonkeyZoo and Sumset together. Tell us about the genesis of FusionZoo and what it's all about.
Yeah, so like I talked about at the start there, the whole premise behind the MonkeyZoo project, other than utilizing these characters and making them sort of personal to individual owners, the idea really was to have these characters, have this ability to be a gaming asset, to be a character that you could use inside a metaverse or inside your a gaming environment. That's sort of promised by a lot of other Web3 projects, that there's always that caveat of, these are going to be used in the next metaverse or game. Whereas I think really what I wanted to do was to have this functionality and this ability for it to really happen from a technical point of view. The idea is that you can have these gaming assets and these characters that can go from game to game, from metaverse to metaverse, or from whatever environment to whatever environment. And I think like I said earlier, I couldn't find a way to do that. And I think it all comes down to really these major fundamental things that the Chia blockchain itself offers, where I think Brandt touched on, where the security of the blockchain itself is super important. You don't want to be working on a blockchain or have any sort of assets on a chain that potentially could have problems, now or in the future. You want to be able to not rely on royalties as such, but you need to be able to have this on-chain aspect of royalties, and not only royalties, but other functionalities that can happen with your gaming assets. And one of the things that I wanted to do with these characters is to almost prove out the way that you would operate any other normal gaming character that you have, whether it's in a Call of Duty game, whatever game that is. you'd want to be able to take your character into a store inside the game, buy a new hat for that character, equip it to your character, and then and then take it away. But the next step of that is, and I think what a lot of projects have sort of promised, is that ability to then be able to, once you don't use that hat anymore, to sell that asset on. And I think there's certainly solutions behind that are happening right now, and there's certainly plenty of Web 2 sort of companies that are doing this type of thing. But the problems always come back to, do they really own those assets? Do they really own them? Do you really own an NFT on Ethereum or any sort of account model blockchain? I would argue probably not. And the reason really is because you don't own the contract that controls those assets. So what's certainly attracted to me, and what we've been working on for the last year, is this way to individually smart contract not only the character, but each individual item that character could potentially own, or possess, and give the owner of those assets real ownership, real control over those assets. So yeah, that's sort of the sort of underpinning of what the MonkeyZoo project is. It's these characters that are 2D in functionality right now, but as we progress, we'll make them into 3D characters. We'll start introducing them into certainly a proof of concept game that we'll be working on, and I think the progress that we've made so far this year has been incredible. It really has. We've sort of gone from a spark, an idea, into something that's actually happening now on the Chia blockchain, that's going to really give us and everybody else this ability to use this puzzle in a really positive way, and a really and I think it's going to change the way that we certainly look at digital assets when it comes to Web3 or blockchain technology. This controlling of the contract is a super important part of this, and yeah, really pleased with where it's gone so far. But I'll pass it back to maybe Grig or Brandt can touch a bit more on that.
Yeah, I'd like to add that there's one of the things that this really answers, that the entire online community has been asking for a long time, is what makes an NFT useful, or what makes it usable. And we've watched other communities on other chains try to answer that question, and I think a lot of it's become sort of external to the actual chain itself. Communities and add-ons and there's a very long list of attempts at making an NFT useful. But I believe now what we're doing is truly on-chain tracking of composable content, tracking of the who made it, the provenance being extremely important, especially in the era of AI, where you don't really know who made it, where it came from. And we're working towards a future where we really do put a stake in the ground for the creators, where they can say, look, I made this. Yeah, sure, you can use it all you like, but please make sure that you track the license, to track the royalties, track everything necessary so that my content is used in the way that I want it to be used. So I think for the first time, we're actually seeing an NFT be more useful than just a single static representation on a chain. So I think that's the most exciting part.
Thanks, Grig. So it's my understanding that we have some stuff to show regarding the Fusion Zoo project. Would you like to move on to that?
Yeah, I think Clyde's gonna share a screen. Are you, Clyde?
Absolutely. Here we are. All right, can everybody see that now?
Yes, it is coming through for me.
Perfect. So everybody kind of has the same feeling of Wallet Connect. We know what that experience is. Oh, there we go. For some reason, my video didn't want to load. There we go. So you go ahead and just copy as you normally would, connect over to Wallet Connect. This will be on the FusionZoo website. So you'll obviously connect your wallet. After that, it'll actually load your MonkeyZoo NFTs directly from the wallet. You'll see that what we're doing in this video is remembering choices for things like pulling the NFTs out of the wallet and anything that's non-transaction wise. We went ahead and just remembered the command. After it pulls in all of your NFTs, you'll be able to see them on the left-hand bar and be able to choose them. You'll notice we don't have the true assets in here. We have a number of test assets that we're using for this video here. But you can select different layers, create your own monkey out of a combination of multiple different NFTs. We are going to have a hard cap as to the number of NFTs you can combine in a single fusion, and that's just due to block size space. The more NFTs you have involved, the higher the CLVM cost, and that means the more block space it takes up. In my testing, I was maxing block space, hitting about 100% of the current 50% of block space at about 39 NFTs on one side. So we're going to cap it at about half that is what we're looking at. You'll notice that you have full functionality to move the individual attributes, change what layer they're on, combine things together, and kind of put things into a really fun and interesting spot as you're building this out. Even such things as like moving the eyes down to the feet, and maybe you want to do a little bit of an Iron Man monkey, so you end up with some of the fire eyes, and you put those on the feet so you can be launching off. A lot of cool and interesting combinations can go here. And back to the hard caps that we're putting in place, that'll just be for a single fusion. So say you take the capped number of NFTs, combine that into a new monkey and create your fused NFT. Well, guess what? Now you can take that fused NFT and do it again. So you can actually have cascading fusions, which allow you to kind of circumvent that cap size. But of course, there are additional blockchain fees and MZ fees associated with that to ensure that everything's in line and we can get those through the transaction blocks as quickly as possible. The fun thing about all this, I know a couple of the models that we've been doing are things like, putting the shorts on the head, or, putting things where they normally wouldn't belong, having multiple monkeys in the same screen. So it really leaves it up to the user. Notice in the metadata, we are using the extended metadata from chip 15, and that helps to identify every single component of the previous NFTs that are used to create the new NFT. Once you hit generate fusion, it's actually rendering that new image in the background and uploading it to a number of different locations so that we can stay true to the same premise that MonkeyZoo has done, where we are hosting in multiple locations and ensuring that data redundancy. This right here is that fun part of utilizing the offer files themselves. So after the full rendering process is complete, the singleton has been deployed on chain. The user is the one who is actually creating the offer file themselves. So it does come through with a whole bunch of jargon with the driver dict. However, I want to point out that anytime you are using Wallet Connect to create an offer within your wallet, you'll have an option for show offer details. And in here, you'll notice the combination of all of our base NFTs, creating our fusion monkey at the end. The other thing you'll notice here is that the optional fee that you have will be included as well, so that the user ends up paying their own fee in order to go through the process. So that's essentially a quick overview of what the FusionZoo is looking like right now. Where we're at is we have submitted the chip to kind of finalize the metadata as well as the Chia Lisp associated with the Fusion puzzle. And after we have community approval in that regard, we will migrate over to the review stage and then, of course, the done stage. And then we'll be launching more of a public beta at that time. Before that public beta, we're doing intensive internal testing. And we also welcome any developers or those interested in helping us with some hardened testing of this puzzle and project to reach out to myself, reach out to Tim, reach out to Grig, and we'll get you added to that testing list also. The goal is we have our internal testing. Once we have everything tidied up and ready to go, We push it out to the open beta, and then we'll be using real assets at that point. So real monkeys engaging with real fusions on mainnet. It's a big question as to what we're doing for display services to show these, because obviously when you have a fused monkey, you might want to know where it came from. You might want to know its hierarchy, its heritage, if you will, and know its ancestry. What monkeys created mine. So what Lucky 8 did for us while he was building out this fusion puzzle is he's actually included 2 different hints within the smart coin puzzle. The first hint allows the puzzle to be identified as a fusion puzzle itself, and the second hint allows the individual project to specify their project. So for display services, not only will they be able to quickly identify utilizing a get coin records by hint call to the full node, all of the different fusion puzzles that exist on chain, but they will also be able to break that down by what project that fusion puzzle belongs to. So really a great way for any of those display services out there, the marketplaces, the explorers, to just use truly on-chain data and display these unique assets that have full on-chain provenance. But I'm excited for it, if you can't tell.
Yeah, I think as well. You know, this is the very first iteration of how this is going to work. It's going to take us a few months to, you know, to tidy things up and make it much more efficient. Over time, it'll become much more efficient. You know, and I think if you can imagine that these assets, it could be as simple as a rucksack for a character in a game that you add NFTs to, essentially putting NFTs inside of this rucksack. It could be, you know, a weapon in a sort of shooting up game that you know the sights become its individual NFT. The trigger becomes, or different parts of the weapon, different skins of weapons can be individually smart contracted NFTs. So you know, I think this sort of first iteration, you know, really shows us that it can be done. And I think we've certainly got a little way to go to make it more streamlined and to actually implement it into things that people may want to use. So, you know, we'd like to build out this sort of proof of concept game where essentially assets can upgrade and downgrade, you know, as if any sort of Web2 game would happen. But you'd have the ability to upgrade these characters or these, you know, these gaming assets, and you, do they become more valuable? Do they become more valuable to a person? Do they become more valuable to the game? You know, and I think that's the key thing, and it's and it sort of harps right back to where you know, the real ownership is by the person that holds that NFT, and that's the crux of it. It really is that simple. And because you have this this sort of smart contracting on such a sort of micro level, you can do many more things with that we've not even really you know, looked into too much just yet. You know, I'd love to be able to see that you can utilize this technology to have some form of maybe a fee that takes a gaming asset from game to game, that you know, there's some sort of fee maybe that it can come into another game, so therefore you can protect your IP. So yeah, it's sort of mind-blowing really that we're at this stage, and yeah, I'm really pleased with how the guys have progressed. So yeah, thanks very much, Brandt and Grig and all the other guys that have been working on it. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And to that point, you know, just another big shout out to Garrix and to Lucky 8 who have helped bring this to fruition. They've been instrumental throughout the process and helping us guide it all. And huge props to Grig for tying all the individual pieces together as well, and putting up with my last minute request to change entire processes. It's definitely been a lot of fun. Now, Grig, I know you've sorry to take a little bit of the role here, Ryan, but I wanted to feed Grig one question. Grig, I know you have had a lot of experience in the music industry and seeing like what Tim was saying regarding IPs and your experience from there, what brought you into Chia and your interest in this project also.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brandt. Yeah, I'm very used to my history, but I'll give you guys a little rundown. So uh, I think a lot of this stuff, my interest in Chia really started with the during the pandemic and the lockdown, when I had a lot of free time on my hands, didn't have any social commitments, and so I decided to jump into as many personal projects as I could. At the same time, I was developing a real-time mixing and combining of different musical assets in a mobile device for a bunch of really popular big name DJs. The benefit to that process was I was able to work with them on every single detail down to literally the microsecond mixing requirements of real-time audio. And we got all the way to the point where we realized that we needed a blockchain. And it was pretty early on. And I actually suggested we write our own. And I'm glad we didn't even go that way. And around the same time, I was mining Ethereum. I had this, I think with a lot of other people on the planet, this fantasy of making money while I sleep, or passive income, or whatever you want to call it. And that was going well, but the changes were in the air for Ethereum already. And at the same time, I had just seen a video by Caleb, who I'm sure a lot of people remember. He was introduced a lot of people to Chia. So it was at that same time that I started buying hard drives, and I was part of the group that drove the price of hard drives up. Sorry, everyone. I think it's come down a little bit since then, but it was kind of amazing watching the industry shift into adapting to using Chia as a proof of work in space and time and space. And I think that was a lot of fun. I love the hobby side of that, building a stack of drives and keeping it maintained. And I still have a closet here that's humming along and heating my office a little bit. Yeah, but then it suddenly occurred to me, I started looking at the underlining core principles, and discovered that Chia had everything we needed to complete the main goal for me, which was finally allowing mixable music. We've been sort of dealing in the music industry with this problem of digital rights management and pretty much the lack of it. And the whole industry sort of decided, well, if you can copy a song and play it on a device, what's the point in paying for it? And the industry turned overnight to, if you're a musician and you want to make money, then you have to tour all the time and forget trying to make any money off your album sales. And I think it's gotten even worse since then. The touring has become not as good of an income source. I think everyone's probably aware of things like Spotify, which just totally rip off everybody. I don't know how they're making the money they are and paying so little to the creators, but that's where this whole project really takes off, is that there's now a way for a creator to get the royalties that they want from music. And so we think, by next year sometime, we'll be releasing a version of this that does music mixing, which will allow you to take tracks from superstar DJs and mix it with your own vocals, or get the latest from Beyonce and run that through as an extra track on your own music. And I think provenance will start to make a huge difference in how people view monetizing their music in the future. And this is, the first step of that. So there's many things that will happen in the future that are going to be based off of this core technology. And so I think the most important thing was proving that this was possible, writing the fundamental coins underneath that do all of the logic, and then testing it with a live project. And we've learned quite a bit. And part of the effort that we put in is to make sure this is truly scalable, so that when many people start hitting it at once, it can handle that. It can handle all of the minting off on the side on a separate secure wallet, while also maintaining the speed that a consumer app should have. So we've kind of spent months on that part of it, just streamlining the technology under the hood. So by the time we're ready to deploy this for something else, it'll be, just rock solid. We're very excited about that.
Yeah, I would add to that as well. I think what's a really clever part of this is and we haven't really touched on this, is the way that you can release all of these these NFTs back to the owner again. So we've sort of touched on the way that you can fuse all these NFTs into one NFT. You can then fuse another NFT all into one NFT, and you could fuse them together. So it's sort of like this never-ending sort of chain of sort of provenance. But yeah, I think ultimately the way that you can and probably Brandt could probably touch on this, but it's that ability for the owner, using offer files and using this peer-to-peer nature that Chia offers. That you can release all of these NFTs back into the owner's wallet. So I don't know if Brandt, if you want to touch on that and how that essentially you can sell a fused NFT and the new owner can sort of deconstruct it as such.
Absolutely. And that's one of the parts I'm really excited for too. And exactly like Tim is saying, is that once you go through the process of, you have, say, 3 monkeys, and you take different attributes from those monkeys and create your fused monkey, your new one. Well, what if you don't want that one anymore? You go ahead and sell it. So now somebody else has that fused monkey, and they don't really like that fused monkey. They don't like what you did for it, but they really liked those 3 monkeys that went into it. They can now interact with that on-chain smart puzzle and, as Tim says, deconstruct or defuse that monkey back to the original monkeys. What that'll do is, instead of the 3 base monkeys, the 3 that you use to create the fused monkey, being locked in that smart contract, now the fused monkey is locked in that smart contract. So you have this really cool interaction now where you can actually keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, or, combine all the way up to a certain height, and then somebody else might buy it and break it back down to get all of the components that went into it. It really creates a lot of unique interactions. And I know Tim's philosophy behind providing rights and providing licenses to the community is really a big proponent of that for how the technology is now. Obviously, once we start getting into something like music, we have to have additional components in the ownership layer to make sure nobody's taking any licenses or anything like that. Tim has been wonderful in that regard, where if you look at the license associated with those monkeys, you really are given a lot of rights to them. You can use them for a lot of purposes, and this fusion concept is just one of them. So I think we're going to see a lot of other use cases, wink, wink, nod, nod, for these monkeys here in the future as well. But to help identify all of those other use cases for that fusion puzzle, I also laid those out in chip 21. So if anybody's interested in what else you can do with it, say, like, as Tim was saying, you might be upgrading a character. So it might almost seem like it's the exact same NFT coming back to you, but instead of it being at level 1, it's now at level 2. Maybe your Charmander turns into a Charmeleon. Sorry, Nintendo. I was just throwing that in there. But yeah, there's really a lot of fun and interesting things that we can do in that regard. And the puzzle is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, and I would say that, a lot of this is for the benefit of the whole Chia community. This is an open source piece of software, an open source puzzle. So part of me is fascinated to see what other people do with it. I've got a vision, and I know exactly where we're going with MonkeyZoo. But I'm intrigued to see how other people view what you can possibly do with this sort of new technology. And it's fascinating to see where it's going to go. I'm really looking forward to being out in the wild, and like I say, just let people play with it and see what happens.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So you may have answered this question as well in kind of our conversations, but what's next for MonkeyZoo or for Sumset? Is it, you know, just running with this for a while, or is there any new project that might be teasable at this time?
Well, I'd say from the MonkeyZoo project, you know, I've got a reasonably comprehensive sort of white paper on our website, which, you know, we've sort of hit all the targets so far. So the sort of the plan for next year is to continue what we're doing now, and essentially that's building the brand. It's becoming a sort of trusted brand in Web3, and you know, the goal is really to tighten up what we've already done. You know, what we have at the minute is the ability for your MonkeyZoo characters, depending on the rarity of items inside those characters, you are sort of gifted a MonkeyZoo token, you know, depending on the characters and the attributes that you own. You know, so what we want to do is make that more robust. We want to you know, integrate that into maybe a way for people to interact with that on the website. And I'd like to think by the end of next year, we have a robust website in place. We have the MonkeyZoo tokens gifting that's sort of seamless. I'd like to see the Fusion Zoo up and running, you know, and the idea behind the Fusion Zoo is not only to have, you know, a bit of fun changing your characters, but, you know, we'll have some competitions along the way. We can dish out some prizes for, I don't know, the most royal monkey, the cheekiest monkey, however we want to do it. So plenty of competitions and have some fun along the way. But, you know, ultimately behind the scenes, it's making it more sturdy, it's making it more efficient and faster. And it's looking to that next step. It's how do we now make these characters 3D? How do we make them so they are actually sprites for a game? Can we utilize these in some sort of AR environment? You know, these sorts of things. But I think certainly the first 6 months of the year is really tidying up what we've managed to do this year, which, you know, at the beginning of the year was nothing. You know, to a point where we've got a sort of reasonably robust gifting system that Gordon, our sort of lead developer over here in the UK, has created. So now this Fusion Zoo part, which again sort of blows my mind. Really, it really does. You know, and I've been sort of looking at it for the last you know, the last sort of 9 months or so, but it still blows my mind. And I think what it is because, you know, I generally go in a lot of what we sort of call Web3 spaces, Twitter spaces, and I listen in on people. And you know, a recent trip to Met Ams in Amsterdam, and listening to people who are, you know, the industry experts in metaverse, etc., etc. And I think what we're created here is a step above it. I think it's the next step along that evolution of how we control gaming assets. So it's exciting times. But yeah, the year ahead for me is more of the same, make it more robust, and then start on that next step of let's get this concept really proven out. How do we use these smart contracts again to protect IP, and to allow these characters to move from game to game, you know, whilst protecting my IP and protecting the environment that they're going into, that side of things as well. So yeah, exciting times. But yeah, I'm very excited. But I'll pass it over to you, the Sumset team.
Yeah, I second that absolutely. I know Tim and we and Tim have an interesting set of projects that we have slated for this next year. Some of that will, as Tim said, be bringing additional functionality or user controls over the MZ gifting system. So that'll lead into a revamp of the website. And I know that Grig and I have been alluding to for a while now the white label store that we have been building out. So you'll kind of see it rear its first head with the MonkeyZoo project here in the near future. And then, of course, we're going to open source an entire white label solution for anybody to launch their own marketplaces and engage with their community via offer files. So a lot of fun in that regard. And of course, this is looking at the Chia community and how we're going to better embolden the Chia community. part of that is obviously bringing in more outside attention as well, which, working with Tim, as he mentioned, he's been in a lot of these other spaces to help bring the larger crypto community into the Chia ecosystem. I think a lot of these additional utility items, as well as fun ways to learn about them and mess around with them, is going to be key to that. I know we have kind of a skunkworks project that we've been doing with Tim as well, which will be announced here at some point, I imagine, early next year. I don't want to get too much into that one. But then even outside of what we're doing with MonkeyZoo, we at SumsetTech have a few other clients that we're working with on some really interesting technologies. The way I will allude to this one is we might end up dabbling a little bit in the carbon credit space and seeing what we can do in that regard. Not necessarily through the CAD-T program, but through a slightly different method of holding and selling and exchanging securities on chain in regards to carbon credits. I think that's about as far as I want to get on that one right now. But definitely going to be a fun one. All of this, of course, means that we need to have very robust tools that are customized and specialized to the projects that we're launching. So one of the things we've done recently is we've started working with another great developer within the ecosystem, Rigidity, on a enterprise wallet solution. And it'll kind of be an internal wallet solution that'll help us to launch all of these different tools and services without building an extensive amount of wrapper code around the Chia client. Right now, we do use the Chia reference client. And for a lot of use cases, we will probably still use the Chia reference client, but we have also found very particular use cases where something that has a built-in queuing system that handles coin selection based on that queuing system might be a little bit more powerful. So having our own enterprise wallet solution is going to be really exciting for me as well. And then I'm going to turn it over to Grig to kind of share what else we're doing in regards to, as he alluded to, with the music space, with AR, with gaming, and all that other wonderful stuff.
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the exciting things is that we do our best to work with the community. And in this case, I really see extending this technology as much as possible to other creators in the space. One of the things we've done extensive work on is making sure that the data for your project is specifically usable in the metadata of an NFT. So that started back with our introduction of chip 15, which allowed us to specify all this stuff. But essentially, 2D images and audio are just one part of a very large set of possibilities. And I'd like to see 3D assets start being introduced this way. I'd like to see the metaverse integration working. I think there's a lot that can be done where in the future, I believe we'll be in a creator economy where people from, anything from authors to film producers to, the people generating 3D models for a film are all actually publishing their content, not necessarily knowing where it's going to end up, but actually just preparing their content in a way where it can be shared with anyone on the chain. And I think one of the most exciting things about blockchain technology is that it is completely decentralized. It's anyone can touch it, anyone can find it. So we're building this first version, and you'll be able to see the NFTs popping up online, and you'll be able to look at the code and see how everything works. And then, once you've produced your own compatible content, we'll be able to integrate it. So I think that's the next big step is, bringing people from the Chia community. I'd love to see more of that. I think we have the strongest community of developers and creatives out there, and I think they're all going to be really excited about this. But then, extending out towards the rest of the world and really bringing people on board who needed this. So that's where I see this going in the near future.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. For the last few minutes here, I'd like to open it up to some Q&A. If anyone has questions for our guests, you can either write them in the chat and I'll relay them, or if you'd like to raise your hand. and ask them in person. I do ask that people remain polite and appropriate, or I will mute you. All right, give it a few minutes. Feel free to ask your questions or raise your hand.
I think I think, you know, I host a Sunday space every week, so that most people have heard most of what MonkeyZoo are doing. I think it's been nice to be able to show off a little bit of the tech now, and you know, the video probably helps a little bit of giving people the idea of, you know, really what we've been working on. And you know, it's this grand idea from years ago, really, that, you know, you really should have these you know, you really want to own these assets, and when you've finished a game, or where you get bored of a game, then why not sell these assets, especially now, as most games now, including web 2 games, you know, you are buying extra assets and you're buying extra skins for your characters with real life money. So there seems to be no reason why now you shouldn't. And you know, I know why, because essentially they don't need to. They're still going to make the money, aren't they? But I think you know, and it's something else we're working on, is sort of this gaming white paper about how essentially you can give web 2 sort of company, web 2 gaming companies, this extra incentive, because, you know, let's face it, they want to make more revenue. And I think if you can give them avenues into how to do that using this technology, then that seems like a win-win to me.
Yeah, definitely agree. Well, it doesn't look like anyone has any questions. At least I'm not receiving them. If someone is trying to ask a question, the chat is open. You can type. But if there are no questions, I just wanted to give a warm thanks to our guests here, Tim from MonkeyZoo and Grig and Brandt from Sumset. It was a great panel, great discussion, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and happy holidays. I see Brandt has that ridiculous.
Yeah, he's going early.
He's going early.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to say thanks for hosting us, Ryan, and yeah, we'll come back when we've got some more for you.
Sounds great. I'm very excited to hear more.
Yeah, seconded. Thank you very much, Ryan. And, you know, Tim, as always, appreciate being on a panel with you, and look forward to sharing more exciting news about this project soon.
And I got one little shout out once again to Lucky 8 for his amazing efforts. He's been working round the clock for months trying to get the perfect on-chain solution, and to Garrix, who has been doing amazing work on the front end, and just putting up with us and all of our daily demands. And yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, I certainly will second that. And you know, I think we can safely say that Lucky 8 has we've certainly changed his plans a few times, which probably isn't ideal, but I think we've got the best solution now. But again, have a look at Chip 21 and see for yourselves. But yeah, thanks ever so much.
Okay. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great.